For the past 5 months, my husband Jacob had been buried in a major project. It wasn't just any project. It was the lifeline of his company, Blue Line Innovations. Jacob was the project lead, and the pressure was suffocating. If he failed, the company would crumble, and with it, the jobs of nearly 300 people. Jacob, always calm under pressure, was working relentlessly. With a degree from Bridgestone University and an MBA from Ravencrest School of Business, he was easily the sharpest person I knew. While he climbed the corporate ladder, I took a different path. I've been a freelance photographer ever since I left college. Though my career wasn't as glamorous or lucrative as Jacob's, it paid the bills and gave me the flexibility to raise our kids. Our 3 children had all flown the nest. The youngest had just started college in Oregon, and we were finally getting a taste of that elusive empty nest life. We had built a solid, simple life together. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. Jacob had always been supportive of my passion for photography, and I had been his rock throughout his rise in Blue Line. The big presentation was set for Friday at the Paramount Hotel downtown. Jacob was responsible for pitching the company's newest tech innovation to a global audience. People were flying in from across Europe and Asia. Jacob had to nail this. Blue Line's future was hanging by a thread. He spent the entire week preparing. I took a couple of days off to support him. But honestly, there wasn't much I could do. I made him a meal here and there, but I was mostly on the sidelines, watching him work tirelessly. On Wednesday evening, Jacob came home in a sleek new suit, ready for the final stretch. He was meticulous, especially when it came to work. He had already packed his bags, organized every detail. All that was left was to execute the presentation. But something strange happened. While Jacob was in the shower, I decided to tidy up his suitcase. As I rearranged his things, a small envelope slipped out from his toiletry bag. Inside were pills I didn't recognize, labeled Naxaril. The instructions were peculiar. Take one if necessary, then another 12 hours later. I quickly tucked the envelope back before Jacob emerged from the bathroom. Curiosity got the better of me. I looked up Naxaril. My stomach dropped when I read the description. It was an emergency contraceptive. I couldn't sleep that night. Jacob had been distant lately, sure, but I had chalked it up to work stress. After all, he was leading the biggest project of his career. But now, my mind was racing with possibilities I didn't want to consider. Jacob and I hadn't needed birth control in years. I'd had a procedure done. Thursday morning, Jacob left for the hotel. I had a pit in my stomach as I watched him drive away. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I debated confronting him. But how could I? How would I even begin that conversation? The whole day passed in a blur. By the evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I got in my car and drove to the Paramount Hotel. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I had to know. The hotel lobby was packed with business professionals, but I spotted Jacob almost immediately. He wasn't alone. He was in the fine dining section, sitting at a corner table, laughing with a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful, elegantly dressed, and completely absorbed in whatever he was saying. I froze. They weren't doing anything overtly inappropriate, but their body language told a different story. They were too close, too familiar. I watched from a distance, unsure of what to do. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they left the restaurant together. I followed them, keeping my distance. They headed for the elevator, and my heart sank when I saw the floor number they were headed to. The 3rd floor. Not Jacob's room. I didn't go up. Instead, I turned around and drove home, my mind spinning. I couldn't confront him. Not yet. I needed time to think. The next morning, Jacob called, sounding upbeat. He told me the presentation went perfectly and that he'd be home that evening. I played along, congratulating him, but inside I felt hollow. By the time he got home, I knew I had a decision to make. The man I thought I knew, the man I had built my life with, was hiding something from me. Maybe it was just work stress that had drawn him closer to someone else. Maybe it was something more. Either way, I had to find out. I stared at Mara and Dave, my mind still reeling from the name I hadn't heard in so long, Emily. I thought I'd buried everything about that part of my life, but here it was, clawing its way back. The trailer felt even smaller now, air thick with memories I'd tried to forget. Why can't Emily donate her bone marrow? I asked, my voice quieter now, the bravado I'd been clinging to starting to falter. Dave glanced at his wife before replying. Emily passed away 2 years ago. It was sudden, complications from a rare illness, and by the time they caught it, it was too late. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Emily was gone. I hadn't spoken to her since I left, hadn't even considered reaching out. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but only one surfaced. And your daughter, she's mine? Mara nodded, her eyes softening as she looked at me. We didn't know either until after Emily passed. When we adopted Lily, she was just a baby. Emily left a letter with her legal papers. That's how we found out. She said you didn't know, that it was complicated. Complicated didn't even begin to cover it. Emily had a daughter with another man, but she still listed me as a father? Or was Lily conceived before everything fell apart? The timelines were fuzzy in my head, but the weight of it settled on my chest. I rubbed my temples, trying to process everything. So, you need a bone marrow donor. You're saying I'm her only shot. She's on the National Registry, Mara explained, her voice breaking a little. But the matches haven't been great. It's risky, and time is running out. We just thought. They didn't need to finish the sentence. I got it. They were desperate, and I was their last hope. I didn't even know how I felt about being someone's biological father, let alone whether I was ready to help a child I didn't know. But then I remembered something Emily said to me long ago, about doing what's right, even when it's hard. She'd always been the one with the clear moral compass. I don't even know if I'll be a match, I said finally, standing up and heading to the kitchen, my back to them. But I'll get tested. I'll do what I can. Mara's breath hitched, and Dave muttered something about being grateful, but I didn't need thanks. I just needed a minute to myself. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, staring out the tiny window of the trailer as the morning sun finally broke through the trees. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of something bigger than myself. I'll get tested, I repeated, more to myself than anyone else. It was the right thing to do, whether I liked it or not. When I turned around, Dave and Mara were still sitting there, both of them looking at me like I was some kind of hero. I didn't feel like one, though. I felt like a man who'd been running for too long, and now the past had finally caught up with me. What happens after that? I asked, setting the mug down. I'm not looking to stir things up or, I don't know, get too involved. We understand, Dave said carefully. But if you are a match, it might be a bit more involved. It's not a simple process, but we'll walk you through it, and we won't ask for anything more than you're willing to give. We just want to give our daughter a chance. I nodded, still unsure what I was really signing up for. All right, let's get the test done. Mara stood up, brushing a tear away before it fell. Thank you. Really. I gave her a short nod, my mind already racing ahead. I was going to help save a little girl's life, maybe even my own daughter. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that somehow this was going to change everything I thought I'd put behind me. Let's get it done, I repeated, more to myself than to them. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about the bone marrow. It was about confronting the ghosts of my past, the ones I'd tried so hard to bury. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and cold metal, a scent I hadn't missed since my last trip here for a busted arm years ago. But this time, I wasn't here for me. I sat in the waiting area, bouncing my leg nervously as Mara and Dave filled out some paperwork across the room. My mind was racing with what-ifs. What if I wasn't a match? What if I was, and things got complicated? What if Lily, my daughter, never even knew I existed? Or worse, What if she did, and I wasn't the person she needed me to be? A nurse called my name, breaking me out of the spiral. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of lead, and followed her into the back. She was all business. Cheerful but distant. Just another patient, just another procedure. I guess that was better. I didn't want any more emotions piling up than I was already dealing with. You ever done this before? She asked, prepping the blood draw. No, I said, my voice sounding rougher than I intended. First time. It's quick. Just need a few vials to see if you're a match. We'll send it off to the lab, and you should hear back in a few days. She glanced up at me, offering a small smile. Try not to worry. People always stress about this part, but it's pretty straightforward. Straightforward, right? But this wasn't just about some routine test. This was about whether or not I could save the life of a little girl I had never even met. A little girl who, apparently, shared my DNA. She finished up, tapped a cotton ball on the puncture, and slapped a bandage over it like it was nothing. To her, it probably was. Okay, all set, she said, standing up. You're good to go. They'll call you when the results come in. I thanked her and headed back out to the waiting room, where Dave and Mara were sitting stiffly, clutching their phones like lifelines. When they saw me, they both stood up, faces tense with hope and fear. That's it, Dave asked, eyes wide. All done. All done, I said, shrugging as though this wasn't the biggest decision of my life hanging in the balance. Now we wait. Mara stepped forward, a soft but grateful smile on her face. Thank you. I can't imagine what this must feel like for you. We appreciate everything, really. I nodded, unable to find words. I felt a twinge of guilt for being so distant, but I couldn't help it. I wasn't used to letting people in, and this was all too big, too fast. The days passed slowly. Each hour felt like a lifetime. I tried not to think about it. Tried to distract myself with work, with the mundane tasks around the trailer. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart skipped a beat. Then, on the fourth day, the call came. I stared at the phone for a moment, fingers hovering over the screen. I wasn't sure if I was ready for the answer. Either way, but after a deep breath, I answered. Mr. Walker? A woman's voice asked on the other end. This is Dr. Matthews from the testing facility. We've received your results. I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. Yeah. There was a brief pause. You're a match. The words hung in the air, echoing in my mind. I sat down, feeling the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. You're a match, she repeated. I'll go over the next steps with you and explain what the procedure entails. It's a commitment, but I want to assure you we'll be with you every step of the way. As she spoke, the reality of it began to sink in. This wasn't just a theoretical idea anymore. This was happening. I could save Lily's life. My daughter's life. I thanked the doctor and hung up, staring at the phone in my hand. A part of me felt relieved, like I had a purpose now. But another part of me, probably the part that had always run from my past, felt scared as hell. This wasn't just about bone marrow. This was about everything I'd avoided for so long. There was a knock at the door, pulling me out of my thoughts. I opened it to see Mara and Dave standing on the porch, their faces tense with anticipation. Well, Mara asked, her voice trembling. I met their eyes, feeling the weight of their hope. I'm a match. Mara let out a sob of relief, covering her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Dave clapped a hand on my shoulder, his voice breaking as he said, Thank you. You don't know what this means to us. I nodded, but the truth was I did know. I knew exactly what it meant. It meant that, whether I was ready or not, I was about to become a part of this little girl's life, a part of Lily's life. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I could run anymore.